Gourmet to the Stars, Scene 18. Let's find it. Oh, goodness me. A civilised whisky. Characters: Lory Gato, Sir Ungh'atib. The wall closed behind me. Outside, the way was dark. A gyro bike was on its way. Ah, Sir Gato. That was Sir Ungh'atib. What did he want? I thought he was anxious to talk to his daughter, not to me. Sir Ungh'atib, Gani, I corrected. He grinned. Call me Lory, I added. Lory, there is something I wanted to talk to you about. Fire away. If you're going to the dig, I really would like you to have the best. The human line of protective suits is fine, but the Tanegi models are built for extra toughness, and more importantly, they have additional features, useful in emergencies. I would feel I've done less than I could if I didn't offer this you. I didn't doubt he was honest and sincere, but there was a pleading behind his eyes, as if he were desperate that I accept. Is your clothing works not closed? This is true, but I realised from my paperwork that I had provided you the wrong kit. So to correct this, I provide the required suits and ancillary gadgets at no further charge. He stared at me, daring me to challenge his version of the events. Good. Was that relief in his voice? I wasn't sure, but in my heart of hearts, I felt it. Heck, I was from off-planet. Why wouldn't he want to show good? He continued, all that remains is to select your improved suit. You haven't used your kit, which you will return in due course, unworn. He was doing me a favour, but he'd worked out the commercial angles. Dark shadows floated by. Soon I was being kitted out, Tanegi style. My unopened message bothered me, and I was mindful of my mission to sample, evaluate, and keep Seed informed. I seemed to be on good terms with Gani. Now was a good time. Gani, I said, as he adjusted a suit on me, checking its fittings. On Human 1, we practice social bonding with different beverages. Yes, he said, from under a trailing hose. Now, part of my remit is to, well, test new ones. I doubt I've anything to interest you on that account. However, I do have a supply of whisky, on which, for the purpose of good interstellar relations, I might ask your opinion, assuming it won't take too much of your time. What man's eyes wouldn't light up at the thought? Scene 19. Hangover 1. Lory Gato and Sir Ungh'atib. The next day began with a hard edge. Whisky goes as down a treat when you've plenty to talk about, and even better when you've nothing to say at all. I'd asked Gani about the drink, respective biologies and so forth. Whisky sour is good, he told me. Sometimes just a lemon. The details of our conversation blurred. Alcohol does different things to different biologies. I'm afraid the finer points of Gani's explanation were lost on me. Morning started with me wishing for more night and less light. I woke on what I guessed was a Tanegi couch with a raging thirst. Not a great situation on a dry world like this. I let you lie in, she has gone on ahead, were Gani's first words. Give yourself time to come to. I will assure you arrive at the working. I came to gradually, and suffered the indignity of yesterday's clothes under my brand spanking new Tanegi style climate protection gear. Gani was unaffected. He briskly brushed about his above-shot flat with great efficiency. Scene... I bet these are out of order. Heck. Scene 20. Hangover 2. To the mines. Lory Gato and a bot gyro bike driver. It was cold. My metabolism didn't care. I was burning up. I needed water, a coffee, anything. There wasn't time. Soon it would be light, and the thin rays from far Havel 71 would light up Prime. I'd be leaving Sir Hugh Clothing Works as I arrived, in the dark. My robot driver made little comment, for which I was grateful. We drove through the airlock into darkened land. Out here, atmospheric pressure was less. The gyrobike force field firmed up and was almost like glass. The moisture from my breath clung for brief moments against it, as droplets before dissipating. Cold sweat lingered under my Tanegi-style climate protection gear. My extremities were soon cooled. My extremities were soon cooled, and I was glad for the extra protection of my gear. I sealed the suit to keep my hands and feet warm. The journey took me into early dawn. Pale light from Havel 71 turned ancient features to aged hills etched by worn, desiccated landmarks and long shadows. I looked for the gleam of ice but had no success. It was too dry here. My mind wanted to turn over the terraforming argument. Why were humans barred? Dangerous question. It flip-flopped in my head for a minute and was discarded. There were better questions, and one more relevant to the here and now was, what was in those rocks? Why was she, and I suppose the Tanegi, so interested in them? Might as well ask why I got up this morning. Because I could. Because I had things to do, because it was my job. The journey ended at an evenly spaced collection of pressurised buildings. I rose, still coming to. A coffee, anything for a coffee. Bitter, dry air bled into the social compartment of the gyrobike. The robot driver didn't breathe. I was on my own. I got up. Still air was beginning to move at the promptings of dawn. It beckoned to my lungs thinly. They wanted to stretch and to fit. I flipped the breathing mask over my face and headed for the nearest building. A dark oval opened in the wall. Behind me the gyrobike sped away. I pushed my way in. Scene 21, Hangover number 3. Finally a coffee. Characters Lory Gato, Gelacia. You see, we regulate the atmosphere content from the entrance. Oh, nonsense. Struggling in the light. Let's go all artificial. I think we can start that one again. You see, we regulate the atmospheric content from the entrance. It isn't a perfect seal, but the rate of loss through rock is acceptable. This makes it safe to work without suits, apart from at the actual face. A long passageway inclined down ahead of us. Although it was bitterly cold, I was sweating in my suit. The gloom of the tunnel was broken by our lamps. I nursed a cup of coffee in my hands. At Gelacia's suggestion, I'd left the extras from my suit back at the mine entrance, a few 100 yards back. Despite appearances, we are not the same. Some of the equipment in your suit could do you serious harm. As a result, the suit was a little lighter, which would make my journey more bearable. Having said which, she did all but scold me for my role in last night's tipple, despite the fact it was me suffering. Alcohol, perhaps, did nothing for them. What had he said? Just the lemon? Lemon was rarely on my to-do list. It was also acid. Did that point to their tastes? I nursed my way through the coffee. In due course, I'd feel lively enough to patch things up. As it stood, I felt certain the scent of alcohol still lingered on me, hasty shower or no. She checked out the final bits of gear. I ought to be admiring her efficiency, but to be honest, I was just happy to be left alone. Bit by bit, the coffee did its trick. "We're ready, let's go." A last small vestige of drink lingered in the bottom. I decided to nurse it for later. Eventually I'd feel better, but this might speed things up. Could I carry it without spilling? I hefted my pack experimentally. "No problem." Gelassia glowered at me. She didn't need to be human to show disapproval. We tramped down into darkness. I held my coffee carefully. I'd have to hold on until the journey was done. No litter here. "Shouldn't be long now." Her voice held few of the inflections of alienness. If anything, it reminded me of English middle class. There wasn't a trace either of her earlier irritation. Perhaps their evolutionary history had dealt a different hand in that area. I suppose as self-starters, stuff like that would work against them. Doubtless they had ways of dealing with it. I stumbled and nearly lost my cup. The ground wasn't completely smooth. On either side there were regular indentations, signs to me of previous workings. What could that be? It must have been done in this dig. Possibly a form of mechanised removal. I didn't plan to ask. Gelassia had gone from officious to friendly, to suspicious, then amicable, and now she flipped between acting normal and scolding me. Was that normal for a Tanegi woman? The question had no answer, for human women either, so I was on familiar ground. I hoped on account of that I'd be spared moodiness. We walked on. A minute later, a large blocky shape hove into view. "Our transport, come." We climbed in the carriage. Ahead, in the centre of the tunnel, lay a narrow-gauged rail track. We picked up speed. I watched the walls go past, shimmering in the light of our lamps through cattle. Eventually it rolled to a halt. We were there. Okay. There's another 4K words. It does get a little bit darker in tone. We don't really need to know that. Thanks for listening.